Over Under Movies podcast, the show where we take a prominent figure or franchise in the world of filmmaking and ask the simple question, are they overrated or are they underrated? My name is Dale DeAndres. I'm joined as always by my co-host. He is the Simon Pegg to my Nick Frost.
Wow. I appreciate you giving me the Simon Pegg.
No, you're definitely not. I'm heavier. I'm definitely the Nick Frost role. Let's
sure,
keep it real.
Okay. But emotionally, who's who?
Mr. Jason Gong. Jason, welcome to the pod.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Shout out to anybody watching us on YouTube. We have some posters behind us now. We got some actual movie posters that Jason's attempted to tape up. Some are taped up better than others.
Yes.
But we're rolling with it. Not only can you see these posters on YouTube, you can also see them on Spotify, because if you're listening to this episode, I should have all of our previous video episodes uploaded to Spotify as well, so you should be able to see it on your Spotify player.
Oh, interesting. Nice.
Yeah, I just went through the Spotify podcast app today and was doing some of that.
Cool.
So, as I alluded to in the intro there, Jason, we're talking about the Cornetto Trilogy today, also known as the Three Flavors Cornetto, or Blood and Ice Cream Trilogy.
I like it.
This is a series of 3 films that were made between 2004 and 2013. They're all directed by Edgar Wright. They're all written by Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg, and they all star Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. Mm-hmm. And they are a series of British comedies that all 3 of them are different like genres of film that are also comedies, and they're all great. I think both of us really like these films a lot.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to say they're overrated for sure.
This is going to be this is a tough one for us for sure. We're talking about this because Shaun of the Dead is currently getting a Dolby re-release in theaters right now, which we saw last weekend.
Yeah, you probably missed it if you didn't see it. Yeah.
Yeah, the 20-year anniversary of Shaun of the Dead. It was actually pretty fun to see in Dolby.
Yeah, and they had some lines that you had never heard before, right?
Yeah, a couple, there may be a racial slur that I was not aware of in that film. It's fine, they're British.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's just go like one by one, talking about the films to start here before we get into the overrated, underrated stuff. Shaun of the Dead came out in 2004. This is a zombie spoof film, but it's also like a rom-com, which is very interesting. Shaun of the Dead is one of my favorite movies of all time. I absolutely love this film. I think it's not just a great movie on its own, or like a great comedy or a great spoof movie, but also it really like lets you in on the mind of Edgar Wright and how he makes movies. And that you could like teach a class on like how tight the script is.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tight script. You mentioned it as we were watching it, and then you've mentioned it since. But like everything that's set up in the first half is almost mirrored in the second half, but like advanced. So everything comes back around. Everyone gets like a perfect full circle arc. And it's tight. It's an hour and 41 minutes or
something like that. Yeah, it's lines of dialogue are reused later in the film as callbacks.
Full sequences are reused, like once prior to the full zombie outbreak and once after. Yeah, it's great.
So it's a film that rewards you for paying attention. Because if you were actually like watching what was happening in the first 30 minutes of the film, the last 30 minutes of the film, you're gonna like be. It's like, oh my god, I get that reference, but it was from the same movie.
Yeah.
Not only that, Shaun of the Dead introduces us to this like frenetic editing style that Edgar Wright puts in his movies.
Yes, he's a very kinetic director. A lot of physical comedy is used, and then like the way he cuts the sequences together also keeps things moving at a clip. Have you ever seen the? Are you familiar with Every Frame a Painting, the YouTube channel?
Yeah, I think they just had a new video recently.
Yeah, it was like a big deal. But I think one of their first videos was Edgar Wright, like a masterclass in visual comedy. And you can see that right off the bat here. If you haven't seen it or listened to it, check out our Scott Pilgrim episode, because we kind of delve into it there as well. But Edgar Wright, he just knows how to use action on screen in a way that's really funny and engaging.
And also using editing as a means of comedy as well. The opening scene of this film it's Shaun and his girlfriend Liz they're kind of having an argument in a pub. Basically, she's telling him like, I don't want to be coming to this pub every night for the rest of my life. I want to go out and do stuff.
What's the name of the pub again? The Winchester.
It's called the Winchester, named after the rifle. The rifle that doesn't work, but does work. And they're talking basically, and you think that this is a shot reverse shot situation, because that's what it's showing you. Similar to like, if you watch us on YouTube here, like that's like your camera setup when you're doing a 2-camera setup, 2 people talking. However, as they're mentioning their friends who are kind of like roadblocks in the relationship a little bit, the camera then widens to reveal that those people are also sitting at the table with him.
Yeah.
It's great.
It is great. Like, just those people hiding right out of frame and then kind of dipping in, or the camera zooming out. Like, it's just good comedy. And, like, it's not even like there's a real joke that's happening other than the fact that there's a surprise reveal of a thing that you didn't expect, which is, like, as pure comedy as you can get.
Yeah, and he does it later in the film with the roommate, he's played by Peter Serafinowicz.
So great.
He is like brushing his teeth or whatever, and he's looking in the mirror, and he looks up and he pushes the mirror to reveal that his roommate is like in the doorway. And then they have that exact identical shot post zombie apocalypse happening, where his roommate is now a zombie in the show.
Yeah. So it's played for laughs at first, and then it's played a little bit for horror the second time around, which is so cool. Yeah, I've read that, like, directing comedy and directing horror are very similar, in that the whole goal is just to be surprising the audience whenever you can.
Yeah, and get the beats down, get the beats. There's a really great oneer that happens early in this film where it's basically Shaun just walking from his apartment to a local convenience store, picking up a soda and a Cornetto ice cream, and he pays the guy at the counter, and then he walks back to his house. And like a couple things happen like along the way, but it's one full shot. And then we get that exact same shot, 15 minutes later, but it's post-zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
So he's completely unaffected, but there's now zombie shit happening all over him.
Right. He's so, like, tired. No, he's so hungover that he doesn't realize that the zombie apocalypse happened while he was on his bender. It's really funny. Like, the setup of this movie, it takes like a minute for it to get into the zombie stuff, because we're setting up, like, there's this romance that fails. Shaun is this stunted man. He's got this friend that's kind of holding him back. And it sets all of that up kind of before we get into the zombie stuff. And then also, as the zombie stuff starts happening, the protagonists are completely unaware because they're so hungover. So it does take a little bit for the zombie stuff to hit, but it's worth it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fun because it's a movie where Shaun has a lot of problems going on in his life, and he's stuck having to figure those problems out in real time while avoiding the zombie apocalypse happening. There's a whole side plot with his mom and his stepdad where he doesn't really accept his stepdad as his real dad. And he is, like, distant from his mom, clearly, and he hasn't introduced his mom to his girlfriend yet. And those two characters meet each other because they're sitting together in the passenger seat of a car, because they're all sandwiched in a car running away from the zombies.
Yeah, it's great.
Really, really cool little details in here. Like, member of this group that we had talked about, you guys, Nick Frost, who plays Ed in Shaun of the Dead. He's basically there to stir the plot along due to his poor decisions. He's always fucking things up for them. And the plot in the film is that he's fucking things up for Shaun as well, with his relationship and his life in general. He's kind of like an adult failure.
Yeah, he's like a man-child, whereas Shaun is trying to be a man, but he's, like, held back by his friend.
Yeah, so he's got to, like, work through that as well. It's a really, really fun movie. The pacing is great. There isn't really a lot of, I would say, like, 3-act structure to this or anything like that. The movie just kind of, like, goes along. The movie has a very stated goal once the zombie stuff happens, which is we need to get to the Winchesters. The great, like, series of montages.
Yeah, because he keeps changing his mind about what the plan is going to be. Yeah.
But then eventually they're like, okay, we're just going to pick everybody up and we're going to go to the Winchester.
And wait for this whole thing to blow over.
Which is kind of what ends up happening in the movie.
Yeah, it's exactly what ends up happening.
Except, the zombies take over the pub.
And they kill most of Shaun's crew.
Yeah, which is a little, like, it's a little brutal, the fact that almost everybody dies in this movie.
Although Lucy Davis, I read in the DVD extras, they reveal that she makes it out alive. The one that's dating David, Diana. She
grabs one of his arms and starts beating the zombies.
Beats the zombies. She grabs one of his legs. So this character that she was dating, he dies because he gets grabbed out the window,
death of the movie,
pulling him apart, and they're all holding onto his legs to try and get him back, but his leg just pops off. So then she runs out to try and get him back and starts beating zombies up with the leg. You assume she dies because she just runs into a horde of zombies. Yeah, and we don't see her again. But the DVD extras reveal that she actually makes her way into a tree and hides there for several days while eating the leg to survive. And then it's kind of like a twist of the knife. she didn't need to be up there because the military comes and saves everyone like within hours, but she was up there for days.
She's like that Japanese soldier that was on that island for decades, thinking that World War II was still happening.
Yeah, it's exactly like that.
That would have been a fun like post-credit scene or something like that.
Yeah,
just her with the leg.
This was kind of before post-credit scenes were the norm, but
this is pre-MCU.
Yeah,
it's a better time for movies,
honestly. But yeah, Shaun of the Dead is a great movie. It's your favorite of the three. Why don't we wait till later to say like why it's your favorite, and we'll just run through the rest.
Yeah, so Hot Fuzz is next. Hot Fuzz comes out in 2007. It is a buddy cop action comedy where Simon Pegg, he played a loser like man-child guy in Shaun of the Dead. And Hot Fuzz, he does a complete tone switch, and now he's this super serious Sergeant Angel.
Yeah, and he's super competent as well.
He's super competent. He's a police officer. He is being relocated from London to this small town.
Yeah.
And I think it's called Samford. And it's basically because like he's making the other London cops look bad because he's so good at his job.
Yeah.
And so he gets relocated to this small village where nothing bad ever happens here. And everything bad happens there. And there's a series of murders and he's stuck having to solve them.
Yeah.
And the movie is, I don't know, like you're more of the whodunit fan than I am. Would you call this movie a whodunit?
Yeah, I would give it that level of mystery title. I think as we were watching it, you pointed out, you know, for a whodunit, you got to have red herrings. You can't just have the most suspicious person be the person who done it. And then in the end, it's like, yep, the most suspicious person did it, along with every other suspicious person. Sorry if you haven't seen Hot Fuzz, but the twist is
it's everybody.
They all did.
Everybody is the killer.
Yeah. Every old person in the town loves the town and wants it to be perceived in a very hoity-toity British way. They're gunning for #1 village or something contest.
Best small village
in England. And so to do that, they kill every perceived blight on the town, including a bunch of teenagers and a living statue. The living statue gag really gets me because it's just a throwaway line at first, and then it's like used in the scene where, you know,
he sees all the skeletons.
All these murders have happened. Yeah.
But it's a fun movie because, you're kind of unraveling the mystery along with him. The movie also is really violent. I mean, Shaun of the Dead's kind of violent too, but this has like way more like blood.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a play on action movies, especially cop action movies. So they pull like full moments from Point Break and Bad Boys 2,
which are featured prominently in the film.
Yeah. I remember the way this was advertised when it came out. It was like, what if two British cops that aren't used to doing action watched a bunch of action movies and pulled from that? Like, it was advertised very differently in America, where the premise was almost like, what if these two guys just really liked action movies and it was just a parody of action movies, which isn't really what the movie is. The movie is this sort of mystery that has to be unraveled.
Yeah, and we've got more of an interesting cast in this one as well. Timothy Dalton plays Simon Skinner, who runs the supermarket in town, and he's kind of the one leading the charges, along with the police chief. Olivia Colman's in this movie for some reason. I guess she's just one of the young British comedians that Edgar Wright was able to get.
Yeah, the entire police force seems to be staffed with just like funny British people, and then the guy who plays Filch. Was he in the police force, or was he the farmer that had all the guns?
I don't remember which of the old British guys.
There's so many old British people in this movie. One of the reveals is that Nick Frost's character's dad, he's the police chief, and he's the other head of this conspiracy. And he's played by, I want to say, the guy who plays Cornelius Fudge in Harry Potter.
He's one of the Harry Potter actors. I don't remember which one.
Oh, no, he is the Slughorn.
No, he's Horace Slughorn.
I think, actor, I want to say. A lot of Harry Potter cycling through here. Argus Filch.
It's Britain. Yeah. Everybody was in Harry Potter. Everybody was in Doctor Who.
And Game of Thrones and the Cornetto Trilogy. Small Island.
But yeah, Hot Fuzz, a lot of fun. The last 20 minutes of this film are pure gas.
Yeah.
Because it's just Nick Frost and Simon Pegg they're not murdering the town, but they're definitely shooting
the town. Yeah.
They take down everybody non-lethally.
Yeah.
With bullets.
Roughly. Except the last guy, because the last guy accidentally activates an underwater mine that blows up the entire police station. He dies.
Oh, yeah, that guy definitely dies. And Timothy Dalton gets impaled through the underside of his jaw.
And that one is almost played like a death scene, except then it cuts back to him and he's like, oh, this really hurts.
It's funny seeing an actor of Timothy Dalton's like caliber,
stature, yeah,
being in this like silly ass movie.
He's so good. Like this might be like one of the best things he's ever done.
But from like a filmmaking standpoint and like a editing standpoint, it's very similar to Shaun of the Dead. A lot of like fast-paced cut, a lot of like little vignettes, tons of callbacks to like earlier parts of the film, especially when Shaun is initially going through and meeting all of the townspeople for the first time. A lot of the dialogue that he has with those townspeople comes back around in those last 20 minutes when he's fighting them again. We have to bring up your favorite thing in all of movies, crosswords.
Yes.
Where he meets the lady in the hotel.
And she's doing a crossword puzzle, and she's talking to him, and he's a cop, and she says fascist, and he's like, what? She's like, oh, no, 7 down. And she says the clue, and the answer's fascist. And then he says, oh, okay. Hag. And she's like, what? And he's like, oh yeah, 3 across, hag. And then yeah,
that line comes exactly back around at the end of the film
when they shoot each other. Yeah,
it's incredible.
Fascist and hag.
One thing I really love about the shootout at the end of the film is that everybody turns into stormtroopers. Nobody can hit a shot at all because these are just random like English townsfolk.
They're not used to shooting guns at humans over there, so it's pretty tough.
So Simon Pegg, it's set up earlier in the film that he's basically like a perfect shot. He can like hit anything. So he's doing all these like crazy trick shots and like shooting things that are in the ceiling to come down and hit people in the head. It's great.
Yeah, I know we were joking about why it's so silly that all the old people have guns, but don't they invite him on a hunt earlier in the movie?
I think that they invite him, out to,
or to go shooting or something.
Do like duck shooting or something like that.
So like, so when I watched this, I didn't really quite put this together, but like they do set up that every old person in the town has a gun, and it's not just a silly cartoon gag that they just have guns on hand. Yeah, one of the best parts is just seeing the old people pull out guns out of nowhere. My favorite is the old lady on the bike that's dual wielding.
Double pistols.
As she's riding along. It's great.
Or the priest when he gets shot in the foot.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. The best townsfolk are, of course, the guys in the supermarket that do the fruit attack. Like a fruit attack.
I like the fruit attack too.
And when they run out of fruit, they just leave. They're working part-time. They don't care.
These movies are so funny.
I guess we can move on to The World's End. World's End is the third film, and I think it's the most different of the 3 because the pacing is not as fast-paced. The movie is much more of like a straight-through narrative. Like quite literally, the setup of the film is that Simon Pegg plays another loser guy again, this guy named Gary King, who he had a group of like 4 buddies that he was like the leader of basically when they were teenagers and guys in their 20s. And all of his friends basically grew up and they're living their own lives in London. And he basically wants to get the gang back together so they can do the Golden Mile in their hometown, which is hitting 12 pubs in a night and drinking 1 beer at each pub. Now, very importantly, we talked about this when we watched it. Do you think you can do 12 pubs in one night?
No, I don't.
So pints?
No.
for any Americans listening, which is almost everybody, I've seen our country stats.
No, our TikTok actually has some range.
So a pint is 16 ounces. So the math is it's 16 beers basically, or quote unquote beers if you're doing like the the drink system.
Right. So 12 pints would be 16 12-ounce cans of beer. Yeah. No, I don't think I could. Could you? In about 6 hours. I think that's about the amount of.
I'm not a big beer guy. If I was doing like ciders,
I don't know,
which is comparable,
it's like so much volume and it's so much carbonation that even if the alcohol doesn't get you, I think something else will.
Well, the question is, I mean, how much time do you think you would need? Like, if we're doing like a 6-hour night, is it feasible? If we're doing an 8-hour night, is it feasible?
For an 8-hour night, I guess 2 cans of beer, but like. I'd probably tap out.
Like if we started at 6 p.m. and we went till 2 a.m., Could you drink 16 beers?
I think if my life was on the line, I could do
It's
it.
like what, 2 to 3 beers in an hour?
Yeah,
every hour.
Yeah, I don't know. It stacks though. Like your body doesn't
I
process.
understand.
Your body can process at most like 1 drink an hour.
Well, it's like a plot of the film is that they're getting drunker and drunker as the night goes
So
on.
good.
So, so when all the shenanigans are happening in the movie, they're also getting progressively drunker.
Yeah.
And they're having like a harder time like dealing with things. This is a movie that I compare to From Dusk Till Dawn because it kind of turns into another movie entirely halfway through, where the movie is basically like a drama between this guy and his friends. The friends are almost like staging an intervention for him.
Yeah, except most of them are getting drunk with him.
Yeah, so some of them are stronger soldiers than others.
Yeah.
Most of which is Nick Frost's character is Andy.
Yeah, he kind of flips from the other 2 movies where he is now the mature
He's the
one
straight man
in the
this.
relationship, and he is fully sober. He's going to go on the Golden Mile and get a water at every place for the first half of the movie.
Yeah, that changes eventually.
Yeah.
They start noticing that some stuff is off a little bit in the town that they're in, and this culminates in like a fight sequence that happens in a bathroom where they realize that the townspeople in their town have been replaced by robots that are like detachable action figures, basically, with like blue blood. So they can like pop their heads off, they can pop their arms up. It's actually a really cool aesthetic to go with instead of just like techno robots.
Yeah, they're cool. They're really cool movie villains. They have a unique and distinct style that I think makes them pretty memorable.
Yeah, they have the glowing eyes and the glowing mouth.
Kind of like the Thing poster right
Yeah, a
there.
little bit like
they look
that.
a lot like that, and it's really cool anytime they light up.
And they like grab your face to try to like turn you.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a Cybermen situation from Doctor Who. They're like, you know, they like replace you with
Yeah, it's cool because it's like kind of like old timey an invasion type of media, invasion of the body snatchers, stuff like that. Like it almost feels like a throwback.
Yeah, because they talk. Well, the robots, they talk about how their plan isn't invasion; it's assimilation, which is interesting. Though ultimately, the robot stuff, I feel like they're just having fun with this one. The ultimate climax of the film is basically the robots going, "I don't feel like fucking arguing with you anymore. We're just gonna leave."
I actually liked it a lot. I thought, it was interesting watching them just kind of have this philosophical argument with the aliens. The aliens represent almost like teachers. All of these movies have kind of like an anti-authority bent to them, where the villains of the second movie, Hot Fuzz, are all the old people in town who want you to act proper and British and keep calm and carry on. And this one is about this group of aliens that wants you to behave a certain way. And in this one, Gary King gets them to fuck off by just being really juvenile and even like being like like at them as he's fighting them. And I think it's cool, like this idea that Edgar Wright is like, we want our characters to grow up, but we also don't want them to just listen to like some douchebags who are trying to tell them what they should be.
Yeah, The World's End is, I mean, it's less memorable than the other two, but I do think it resonates, at least like for us, because of our ages.
Yeah, we're coming up on that age that they are in that film. They're in their really late 30s, I think.
Yeah, so the movie is really about the struggles of trying to hang out with your friends when you're all in your 30s.
Yeah.
I know for us, it's like every weekend, we're like, okay, who's available? Can you do Saturday? Can you do Sunday? All right, how about next Saturday? And I mean, God forbid, wedding season comes along. This is, I know, is a nightmare for you. You're like, just cross off every weekend in October. It ain't happening.
I have to go to so many weddings. Yeah. No, it's a cool movie. And yeah, I read Edgar Wright's like philosophy on making these is like, they're kind of supposed to be about the dangers of perpetual adolescence, which you see a lot in Shaun of the Dead and in World's End. A little less in Hot Fuzz, but that's one of the themes he's really interested in. It's the same with Scott Pilgrim. Like, these are just like male losers that have to learn to grow up. And I think that's
not
cool.
date high schoolers. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Check out our Scott Pilgrim episode where we talk about why he shouldn't date a high schooler.
Has not aged well. He did that between Hot Fuzz and World's End, right?
Yes. So this came out in, I keep gesturing now that it's here. Scott Pilgrim came out in 2010, I believe. And then World's End was 2013. And then he wasted a little bit of time starting to direct Ant-Man. And then he did Baby Driver and Last Night in Soho. But Yeah, this trilogy, he moved to America for a while and then went back, finished the trilogy, and I would assume he's kind of back here doing stuff.
Yeah, I kind of feel like Edgar Wright might just be better off doing these type of movies. It seems like stuff that he's comfortable with.
Yeah, the British stuff, yeah.
And he clearly has like actors that are interested in like being in his stuff. Obviously, Simon Pegg's still acting. And what's Simon Pegg even doing nowadays?
Well, he just got killed off in
He
The
just
Boys.
got killed off in The Boys. Spoilers.
Yeah.
I don't think they're making any Star Trek films anytime soon.
He was in the Scott Pilgrim cartoon with Nick Frost. They had a cameo.
But other than that, is that what they're going to do? They're going to be the next version of the Scrubs guys where they just do commercials together?
I don't know. I doubt it. I mean, they both do other stuff. I can't think of anything recent, though.
But I mean, making an Edgar Wright comedy is super easy. You just take like some other genre.
Yeah.
You throw in Simon Pegg and Nick Frost.
Yeah.
One of them is the goofy one of them is the serious one. You have to find some great actress to be in it. You get like Cate Blanchett. Well, Cate Blanchett's in Hot Fuzz
as a cameo. Yeah.
Because like Olivia Colman's in Hot Fuzz and then Rosamund Pike's in World's End.
Yeah.
So you have to get some like really like top tier British actress that's too good for doing like a random ass comedy.
Yeah, I could see like Helen Mirren being in the next one if they were going to keep doing. I guess they wouldn't call it Cornetto anymore.
Bro, Helen Mirren did She Damn too. She'll do anything.
Isn't she in the Fast and the Furious movies as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, the bar's pretty low.
Is the check clearing? I'm in, baby. I'm in.
Now, these are good movies, and it's really clear that it's made with a lot of love from like the key players in it. So Edgar Wright, Simon Pegg, Nick Frost. They also all have the same producer. They're produced by Nira Park. She's produced every single Edgar Wright film, including the ones he's made over here. So Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Yeah,
I mean, there's a collection of actors that are in all of these movies, just in like random side roles.
Yeah, Martin Freeman's in all of them. I think the guy who plays Filch is in all of them.
Yeah, Martin Freeman's like a super duper minor character in the first two films, and then he finally gets an actual role in the third one.
Yeah, he progressively gets more and more lines throughout the films. In the first one, he might have no lines, or I think he says hello, and then in the second one, he has this little spiel about why Simon Pegg has got to go. He's not allowed to be in London anymore. And then the third one, he's just a character.
Do we want to talk about like how each of us like rank these three films?
Yeah.
What I mean, mine's pretty simple.
1, 2, 3.
It's 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
I think my hottest take is that on this rewatch, I think I liked World's End the best.
Oh man,
it might just be because we're getting older.
Because that is the hot take. Because Hot Fuzz versus Shaun of the Dead, I think, is like,
a pretty common argument.
I mean, if you look at like the Rotten Tomatoes scores, all of them are rated highly.
Yeah.
Shaun of the Dead is a 92, Hot Fuzz is a 91, World's End has an 89.
Right. I don't think it's that out of left field to be like this one that's ranked 3 points lower is actually the best. But I just found it the most interesting. I think it had more philosophical ideas behind it. It's also like it's playing in a sci-fi world rather than a horror world or an action movie world. Sci-fi kind of lends itself to those types of philosophical discussions. So I just enjoyed it a lot. I felt like we're of an age where we see a lot of our friends getting married, settling down, but still wanting to have fun and trying to strike that balance.
You know, we live in the city. You know, we're from a small town.
We live in the city. We're from a small town. We would never go back to where we're from to do a Golden Mile. Are there even 12 bars in our town? No. So yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I related to it more, I think. Like, I don't really relate to the Hot Fuzz characters that much.
So now you sound like me, where your enjoyment of a film is tied to how much you can directly relate to it.
I guess. But I also think, like, the action is improved, or at least the action choreography is improved, especially from Shaun of the Dead. But I think, like, the fight scene in the bathroom of World's End is pretty well done, and there's just a lot of really cool sequences and shots, and I just really liked it. So I'll put that at 1 for me. And then it really is just a toss-up between Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz. I think they're both really good movies. Shaun of the Dead, I think, is a better script, I want to say, or a better, like, tight story. But then Hot Fuzz, I really like that mystery element to it. So, I don't know. I'll just give the hot take that I like World's End the best and leave it there.
Okay. Let us know in the comments, how do you guys rank these three films if you've seen them? Do you have the Letterboxd scores in front of you?
I have Letterboxd open.
Do we, or we'll just do the objective average of the three films?
I guess. I mean, anytime we try and put too much math in this podcast, like, who cares? No one's listening to that.
I feel like whatever we come out to here, it's going to be high for the objective score.
It's going to be high. All right. Hot Fuzz has a 4.1. Shaun of the Dead. Dylan, while I'm looking this up, why don't you tell them why it's called the Cornetto Trilogy? Shaun of the Dead has a 4.
Because there's a recurring character of an ice cream cone called a Cornetto. Do they sell Cornettos over here?
I'm not sure. I mean, it looks like a pretty standard ice cream cone. And then World's End only has a 3.6. So 3.6 plus 4.1 plus.
It's like a 3.8, 3.9, something like that.
Yeah.
Let's say 3.8 out of 5, which is what, a 7.6? Do I have that right?
Oh, it's a 3.9 on the dot. So 3.9 out of
3.9 out of 5 is our objective rating.
And you want to times that by 2, 7.8 out of 10.
7.8.
78. Yeah, so that's the Letterboxd aggregate there.
Which one of us is going to be stuck saying these are overrated?
Oh, shoot. You know, I think you're closer to these movies than I am. Like, none of these is one of my favorite movies, and you said Shaun of the Dead is one of your favorites. So.
Okay. So, Jason, your task is to say that the Cornetto Trilogy films are overrated on the fly.
Let's see here.
ChatGPT.
No, I'm not going to use Chat. They're not going to know anything. You know, just these accents can be hard to understand. No, you know, it's Edgar Wright started doing these when he was in his 20s, so he was relatively new to the scene. He wasn't fully seasoned. And you pointed out that some of the frenetic editing during action sequences in all three of these films is largely due to being to having a little bit underbaked fight choreography. So when I compare it to something like Scott Pilgrim, where fighting is so integral, it doesn't seem like they had as good a talent on there doing the action sequences. So, like, it's not that vital to these films, but there is action and violence in all of them, and none of them have, like, mind-blowing action the way that a lot of other movies do that we've covered. So that's one thing.
I got one. We'll tag team.
Okay.
We'll tag team it here.
Okay, good.
I would say if there's one hole you can pick in the Cornetto films is that they are comedies first, and then whatever genre that is also is secondary, sometimes to the film's detriment. Like, Shaun of the Dead is a zombie film, but it's not a very, like, well-made zombie film.
The zombies aren't scary.
The zombies aren't threatening ever. It's not really explained what's going on with the zombie apocalypse. A lot of the times, if you watch, like Dawn of the Dead, or you watch, like, other classic zombie films, a lot of the times, yeah, they are telling those personal stories while the zombie apocalypse is happening around them. And this film leans so much more into the comedy and using the zombies as just, like, a plot device, basically, right, to just keep things moving. Hot Fuzz is similar, like we were saying earlier. It's not really a very good whodunit. It's not a good mystery at all.
Yeah.
So, like, the central, like, conflict of the film really isn't there. The movie is just basically making a bunch of gags to lead up to that last 20 minutes, which is like a great fight sequence. So I think you can kind of poke holes a little bit in the individual plots of the films, which ultimately don't make a huge deal because the movie's really funny. But yeah, I think you could definitely, like, focus on those elements a little.
Yeah, I would say that. And then, like, I've read that a lot of people who watched World's End really thought that Gary King, Simon Pegg's character, was a really cool dude. And in the movie, this man is clearly intended to not be cool. He kind of talks with interesting turns of phrases that almost make him cool, but he's like a loser. He's an alcoholic. He can't maintain his friendships or relationships, and he's holding on to his memory of the last time he tried to do the Golden Mile, which is the highlight of his life.
Yeah, he talks like the worst guy you know from high school.
Yeah, but a lot of the audience that watch this movie think he's awesome and want to be like him and dress like him, and they tell Edgar Wright that. So there's something that gets lost in translation.
So this is like my overrated argument from our Fight Club podcast, where I went,
sure, yeah.
This is bad, actually, that he put this on screen.
Yeah, because
dumb teenagers are going to get the wrong message.
The worst men just want to be like the worst characters. Yeah.
How many 15-year-olds watch The World's End and went, Mom, I need you to buy me an overcoat?
Yeah. I don't know. How old were we when that came out?
We were in
We were in
college.
college, yeah. So I didn't actually see it when it came out. I don't think I would have been enamored by that character, but yeah, that's one thing, is that people don't always understand Edgar Wright's intentions with the films, and that's kind of like, that means it's overrated if these guys are giving it 5 stars and they don't even understand what they're watching. But yeah, I don't really have much else. I think these were really well done films.
All right, so I mean, the underrated argument here is, at least for me, is pretty simple. First of all, these movies made really good money for their budgets. The films had a total budget of $38 million between the three of them. They made $156 million at the box office. Now, World's End did not make a lot of money. It probably made its budget back, and that's it. It made 46 off of 20 million, but Shaun of the Dead made $30 million off of a $6 million budget. And like, good on Edgar Wright for not making Shaun of the Dead 2.
He talked about doing that, yeah.
And, you know, he had the wherewithal to be like, no, I want to do another story using, you know, the same actors, probably a lot of the same crew, and just making like a whole different type of like genre comedy, which is really cool. What makes this like really underrated is that this is a type of film that just doesn't exist anymore. These type of like low to mid-ish budget comedy films that are wholly original, that are made with like really good casts, that are not like, you know, star-studded casts by any means. It's just like a really good filmmaker with a great vision and a cast that's clearly committed to the bit that he's going for, and they come out all the better for it. We just do not see movies like this anymore. If you're going to see a comedy film like this nowadays, it's going to be some like random thing on streaming that you catch that you're like, oh wow, that was delightful.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't think of anything comparable from the last few years.
Yeah, or it's got to be a sequel or a reboot or something in some other franchise.
Yeah, and even Edgar Wright's last 2 films, Last Night in Soho and Baby Driver, they're not really like this at all.
Yeah, it's weird that this is an Edgar Wright pod, but like he's definitely fallen off, right?
I didn't see Last Night in Soho, so
Last Night in Soho is really average of a movie.
People quite like Baby Driver, though. They were still hot on him.
I feel like Edgar Wright, you know, he might be in the James Gunn zone a little bit here, where
he can only do one thing.
He's really good at making a type of movie, which
I will say
a genre comedy.
Scott Pilgrim kind of slides into the Cornetto Trilogy and is a very similar type of thing, where it's like actually about relationships, but it's packaged as like an action comedy. And then Baby Driver is kind of just a straightforward action movie that has some funny moments. And then I didn't see Soho, so I don't know.
Yeah, Baby Driver, one of the worst like aged films of all time at this point.
In terms of who's in the cast.
Yeah, because of the cast. I think, weren't they talking about doing a Baby Driver 2? I'm guessing Baby Driver made a lot of money. That's got to be the only reason why they'd still want to do it.
Yeah.
Even though you're not going to do it with Kevin Spacey again, obviously.
You probably wouldn't do it with any of those people.
Yeah. So what's our final verdict here? Do you think it's underrated or overrated?
You know what? Just because we've been sending our list of episodes around to people we want to have as guests, and a lot of people have asked me, what's the Cornetto Trilogy? And so for that reason alone, I'm going to say it's underrated.
Because people don't know that these 3 films together are called the Cornetto Trilogy?
Yeah.
I do think, at least for American audiences, these might be movies that are kind of underseen. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason,
especially World's End. World's End was.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm sure there's a ton of people that aren't even aware of World's End.
Because some people kind of consider Shaun of the Dead a cult classic and Hot Fuzz a cult classic, but no one considers World's End a cult classic. No one's really going to bat for that film. So for that reason too, I'll say it's underrated.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with underrated for sure. Even though, like, critically, these movies are pretty, like, well-reviewed, given the fact that they're comedies. Because, like, general audiences just might not be aware of these movies, even though I think they're, like, old-time classics at this point when it comes to, like a comedy troupe, like, making movies. I mean, you can compare this to, like the Monty Python guys making movies, or, like, all the different Saturday Night Live cast movies that have come out. This is better than any of that stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
And he's using all the same people and, similar tone for all of his movies. So, yeah, definitely if you're listening to this pod and you haven't seen any of these 3 movies, or you haven't seen The World's End or something, definitely check them out. They're movies that they're paced really well. They're easy watches. They're not super long, which is great.
Yep, love that.
World's End I think it's like 2 hours, so.
It's just under, I think.
Yeah. So he's fighting off the demons of like making like the 2-hour, 15-minute movie
Yeah, good for him.
that all directors fall into once they get a little bit of budget for their film.
Yeah, I just watched Transformers minutes before doing this podcast, and that movie is 2 hours and 26 minutes.
It's funny. I know that that's like a common thing with movies where directors will do the spec script, right? And I know that like a page of a script usually amounts to around like a minute of movie time.
Yeah, that's like a rule of thumb, yeah.
And like they'll go through and they'll write like the whole script and they'll be like, oh, this movie's gonna be 4.5 hours long.
Yeah.
Time to trim down.
Movie making is amazing.
I don't think I could ever do it like the script writing. Like it seems like a fucking nightmare.
Why? No, that's the part you should try your hand at.
I'm more of a like the novel writing side of things. You can put a lot more fluff in like a book.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I think you'd like
But I mean, you know me and like what I like. I am so like critical of like movies that are too long or movies that are, well, I would like hate myself like for any stuff that I would feel is like extraneous.
Yeah,
Cut that out.
I've written some screenplays and they're longer than they're supposed to be, and I don't kill my darlings. I mean, I don't make them, so it doesn't matter.
Like we're keeping the scene where we go to the pub.
Yeah,
All of the scenes where we go to the pub. That's the best recurring character in the Cornetto films, is just all of the alcohol.
just the fact that England has so many pubs and they're all basically the same.
A lot of alcohol and a ton of smoking. Just
Yeah,
smoking.
not as much in
absolutely
Hot Fuzz, but yeah, I think it's interesting because in Shaun of the Dead, the smoking's just there. In World's End, the smoking kind of indicates that, they're losers stuck in the past. So it's a way of showing that this cast and this director have grown up a little bit.
how much the world changed between 2004 and 2013.
Yeah, a lot in 9 years. But yeah, it's cool to see as a trilogy just the way that as a team these people have grown as well, creatively and emotionally. And even though you rank them 1, 2, 3, you can still tell they've grown up and matured and improved on their craft, even if you like their first movie best.
Yeah, I would love to see these guys take another crack at doing some other genre.
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't want them to say that it's a continuation of the Cornetto Trilogy, because it's just nice that it's a complete trilogy. But yeah, I'd love to see the 3 main guys back together again.
What would be the genre that they tackle, do you think?
They talked about doing a direct sequel to Shaun of the Dead where they just are like, now it's vampires. So I'm not necessarily saying that, but I think they could do anything. Yeah, maybe. I kind of wish he didn't do Baby Driver, because I think it'd be fun to see them in a heist movie. I don't really think vampires is what I want to see. What about you?
I was thinking a period piece.
A period piece could be cool. That's really tough to pull off as a comedy, though.
Because I mean, what's that British royalty show called? Is it called Bridgerton? Bridgerton.
Oh, Bridgerton's really big right now. Yeah.
Just do something like that.
Yeah, I mean,
comedy
they're all
actors.
British. Yeah, they could be in the royal court or something and telling a story. I think that would be good. I think a heist movie would have been really fun for them, although I don't think Edgar Wright will go back to that well. And maybe like, I don't know, a fantasy or something.
Yeah, something that's like hard fantasy or hard sci-fi,
Yeah.
like really, really like weird like setting.
Yeah.
Though I think like these films being set in England are kind of mandatory.
Yeah, so maybe like a fantasy where the world starts to change or something, rather than just having them set in like a D&D world or a Lord.
Maybe like a time travel movie
Oh, that would be fun.
where they're going through time. In England.
Originally, there was supposed to be some time travel in the World's End. They would go back and talk to their high school selves, I think, when they're doing the Golden Mile.
Oh, okay.
But they cut all that as they were writing.
Well, they do have the high school versions of themselves show up as robots, so I guess they kept a little bit of that in. Anyway, it's the Cornetto Trilogy. Check it out. Jason, any final thoughts?
No, these are just good movies. And it's one nice thing is that it shows that, you can just make movies with your friends and find some level of success as long as you love doing it. So kind of inspirational in that way.
Yep, good stuff. That's going to do it for this one, guys. Make sure you check us out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Pods, wherever you get your podcasts, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, all that good stuff. 92% of podcasts don't make it past the 10th episode. So we're doing good. We're keeping up with it. And we got a lot of more cool stuff coming at you guys. So definitely definitely keep an eye out for that. Anyway, that's going to do it for this episode of the Over Under Movies podcast. We will see you at the movies. Bye.
Bye.
Be out.